I don't know, my experience in war, maybe I can give a different angle. It was kind of fun because our cousins came over,
Yeah,
and that was the time where we, you know, were not going to school
yeah,
and we're just playing board games, and even if there's no electricity, it's just us playing and our cousins, and it was a good time.
yeah.
I mean, I don't know if you mentioned this, but we'd hear the missiles like flying, and it almost sounds like it's gonna land on your house.
Yeah, 1998.
That was
I
98.
remember it like vividly, you
Yeah,
know.
so it must have been that because
Yeah.
I don't think I remember nine
I mean,
90s.
partly is what you're saying, there was no school and stuff,
Yeah,
but like it was at nighttime,
yeah.
and we're hearing the missiles,
Hmm.
and we're literally sitting on the couch in the
Yeah,
corner
yeah,
of the living room,
yeah,
and it's like
yeah.
it's coming to your house. It
Exactly.
was frightening.
Yeah. And
I
and
remember it.
it was if it did fall on many houses, I think, and many civilian homes. They weren't like necessarily government locations or presidential homes. So there were a lot of people that did die. There was a mall next to us, I think, that also got hit. It
Hmm.
was like literally across the street.
Yeah.
And so these bombs were falling randomly,
Mm.
and we could hear them. But I think maybe Nabil can tell us a little. I think our most vivid memories of the most recent war, and maybe I'll start with um, the fact that we had gotten at that point so used to war that you do the same routine. You stay home, you shelter downstairs, um, you get ready. I think we had gotten ready as far as getting enough water and food just in case. You never know what could happen, and I think the U.S. Army was conquering Iraq from the south up northward up until they reached Baghdad, and that day happened to be Saturday. And I don't know what inspired us to to leave home, but we decided to go to church. And while driving to church, we noticed that there was the army was basically almost dissolving, and they were running away. And we saw people running with AK-47s and bazookas, and we decided to. I think church ended up closing that day, and so we decided to turn around and come back. But you remember anything?
Yeah, I mean, I remember too many things, unfortunately, but it's just amazing to be able to survive all that.
Mm,
I remember this one time we were going to church,
hmm.
and we had just crossed the bridge, and we had just passed through the green zone,
Yeah.
which happened to be the main area where the American military was based
Hmm.
in Baghdad, Iraq,
I think I was driving.
and
Yeah. Yeah.
I
That
can
was
vividly see it in the back of my mind right now, that big bombing
We
of
heard
that.
a loud
Yeah, it
explosion.
was loud, it was
We turned around.
huge.
There was big smoke.
Well,
Alleged,
we passed by it.
we passed,
It was a police station.
we were minutes away from the
Literally
bombing.
2 minutes, I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
And apparently, if my memory doesn't fail me, I remember hearing something regarding that suicide bomb, that car that blew up. It landed on a three-story building. That's how
Wow.
massive that
Mm.
bombing was.
Mm,
Hmm.
This was just one of many things that we experienced.
mm,
Our church was bombed a couple of times.
mm,
Um, you know, we worship on Saturday,
hmm.
but the first time happened hours before on Friday night. Uh, so many different memories of, like you said, you both said, the sounds of the missiles, the sounds of the guns, and
Mm,
the shootings. There was a a family of, I believe there were two girls. One was in your class and one was in mine, and their mom would walk them in front of our house to and from home and school and back. And they happened to be, unfortunately, a missile landed on their home, and I remember they lived close to our home,
mm.
and we drove by their house, and there was that big pit in the ground, that big, unfortunately, house
Almost
that
like a
was,
crater. Yeah.
right, that house that was just, demolished with their toys and clothes.
Mm,
It was a very tough time.
Yeah.
Besides the fact that electricity was, Eva, you mentioned we had a generator. But again, even with the generator, the neighbors didn't like the noise. They demanded that we would share the electricity, and there was complete unrest. Everybody's stressed, everybody is scared, everybody is,
Mm-hmm.
trying to survive. We didn't know what was going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
We never thought about leaving because all we knew was Iraq. We had never left the country.
Mm-hmm.
We had gone on a few trips to Mosul and then Kirkuk and a few other places, but yeah, I mean, it was definitely memorable.
Yeah.
The
Mm-hmm.
country kept going through more political unrest, of course, and civil conflicts. Were you threatened personally? I mean, all what you're talking about is general, everyone is going through that. It
Mm-hmm.
was not pointed at one person. But did you feel threatened personally?
Mm. I almost feel like if you ask any Iraqi family, like, have you experienced the loss of a loved one? Have you gone through something personal? The answer will always be yes.
Hmm.
And speaking of during the war and to finish off with the previous point, we were sitting one time in the guest room and right by the window, and I
Hmm.
think there was
Mm,
a mine that exploded,
mm.
and the windows shook so loud that you and my friend jumped from the chair and landed on the floor like the next side of the room. It was so loud. But it was just that was like constant and common all the time. But I think our experience with was worse after the war, and that's when we had
Actually,
the
literally
the prisoner come show up at our
like a
house.
day or two after they took
It
over.
was like the same day or the day
Well,
after. Yeah.
just to fill in
Hmm.
something real simple,
Mm,
um, days before the war back in March 2003, the former president, Saddam Hussein, he released most or all the prisoners
mm,
to defend the country from the enemy
Hmm.
because the enemy was on the verge of conquering our country.
Hmm.
And, so many bad people left the prison cells and they were roaming around, of which one person was
Yeah.
the
The
person that.
previous owner of our home, who was smuggling soldiers out of the country in the Gulf War, and he was uh, I think it was his wife that gave him up, and then she ended up selling the house, which we and our neighbors ended up purchasing from her, and we don't know where she ended up leaving. But
And since then, he was put in prison. Saddam
yes,
put him in prison.
exactly.
But now, right before,
Yeah, and I think it was a political move to release the prisoners because
mm,
the intention was to just
Create chaos.
create chaos and just heavy unrest so that the transition into whatever next government is going
mm,
to take place is not going to
Mhm.
be easy. Another thing was he had hid, he being the president, Saddam Hussein, had hid weapons in elementary schools. And so one of our best friends, Anmar, uh, he was one of the first ones to find these weapons in the local elementary school that we went to. And he came up to us and he was like, "Do you need anything? Do you need any weapons? I have a bunch of stuff that I found." And so our typical answer was it was Seventh-day Adventist.
We're conscientious
Conscious,
objectors.
exactly. Just to be clear, what is that?
We refuse to carry arms because we don't believe in killing other individuals.
Hmm. And so our answer for him was that we are conscientious objectors, that we don't believe in bearing arms, and also Um, I mean, I think it's personal. I'm not gonna say this for everybody that's Seventh-day Adventist because we have people that serve in the military and there's different people, different convictions. But
Mhm.
that was our family's conviction at the time. And I remember this exact statement that we told our friend is that our God is our weapon. And of course, I think to him it probably didn't make sense at the time. But so this prisoner showed up at our house, and what what did he want?
I think it was, yeah, literally a day or two after the US took over. And we were also playing video games. Everybody knows we played a lot of video games. Doorbell, random guy shows up
Yeah,
by the gate, and I don't know. My parents went maybe
they
outside.
went to talk to him
They went
outside.
to
Yeah.
talk to him, and
Mm.
supposedly it was some sort of, I guess, what you could call it maybe a mild argument. Okay, this is my house. This was taken from me. I should be getting this house, and so on
Mm.
and so forth. And I think my mom, as far as I can remember, my mom was saying, no, well, we bought this house. This is ours, and so on. And so it didn't go much farther than that.
I think there was
It was back and forth a little
threatening
bit.
exchange between the
Yes,
two, and so he said, "I'm gonna come and take it by force," and
right,
my mom had said that no, we were gonna get help from the American soldiers
right.
to protect us, and so uh, I think that's what exactly happened. My parents ended up going to this American unit, and they spoke to some of the soldiers there, and they said, "Listen, somebody's threatening us, and they're a dangerous person. Please protect us." And they agreed to protect us. And so,
They were attempting to help the Christian families,
is
and
that
I
what?
and I say attempt because it was not their mission to save
Yeah,
anybody,
yeah.
except for just do what they're
We,
ordered to
I
do.
just want to say that we met some of these American soldiers, and they were nice people, common, students, I think. Some of them were even teenagers, like 18 or 19, that were trying to make money to go to college. Um, so we sympathize with with them. It wasn't easy for them either. But this person ended up showing up with two huge semi trucks, blocked the street. Or he had a small street. He blocked both ends of the street, and 10 gunmen came down with AK-47s. And
I think 16.
16?
I remember
I
seeing
think
about
we
8 coming out of one
there was a lot.
semi truck
Yeah,
and
we
another
were looking
8
out the window.
fully armored,
Yes, and
fully prepared to.
our outside gate,
Hmm.
we always locked it at that time because you never know
Hmm.
who's roaming around. And so they knocked on the door, on the gate, and they were shouting, you know, leave, get out, leave, leave. We're about to take over.
We're about to bomb your house
Yeah,
and take your house
and
from you.
take your house. And we didn't open the door, but we were hearing them. And I remember we had a ladder behind the house set up
Just in case.
just in case they actually break in, that we would escape
Escape
from the
from the.
back.
Hmm.
Yeah. And so my mom asked us to do something.
Mm.
You guys
She asked
remember?
us to do it.
Yeah,
Mm.
that's what I
To
remember.
pray, yeah.
Yeah.
She said we can't do it, obviously anything right now. Just you guys should. I mean, we're watching them threatening from the outside. They're not
Hmm.
breaking in, but they're
They're
like,
knocking
okay,
the door hard,
knocking the
and
door. We're
they're
gonna bomb. We're gonna bomb the house. We're gonna
Very
just
yeah,
intentional.
break in,
Very intentional.
and they were. I mean, for them to come with two semis and 10 plus gunmen.
hmm they're not wasting time.
No, I mean they're
Yeah.
coming to take care of business. I mean they're
Hmm.
gonna get something done.
Yeah.
And but of course, we found out that the Humvees they saw them and they passed by, so they didn't
They actually drove by.
dri-
They tried to help, but then
yeah,
they saw us too much trouble,
yeah.
so they
So
drove by.
they didn't help. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, so I think my mom was like, all we can do just pray.
Yeah.
So we knelt, three of us.
Hmm.
I remember the little couch we had. It was probably the size of this.
Yeah.
And then you were there, he was here, and I was here, and we just prayed to be saved just that day.
Mm.
Yeah.
And it's probably the biggest testimony in my life that allowed me
Mm.
to understand that God is real.
Mm.
Because here you are on the verge of dying
Mm.
and you're stuck. You have
Mm.
no weapons. You have nobody to save you.
Mm.
You have no power as a kid. What can you do if the American soldiers in their Humvees drove by, were afraid, decided to keep going?
And they were angry, and these
Enraged.
prisoners, they
Yeah.
don't care about, it's nothing. So they shortly after they uh, they started talking to some neighbors, and
Yeah.
and then they ended up somehow leaving.
Yeah. And I think it was that same neighbor that calmed them down a little bit and
Mm.
told them to leave, like, don't do this. And they were the ones that noticed
Hmm.
the American
Mm.
unit drive by. So, but like you said, I feel like this is one of the powerful testimonies that we have, that like to experience and know that God is real.
Hmm.
Now, shortly after, I think it was the same day or the next day, I don't remember, but
Not that we
we
question that God is real, but I mean, because
He became real to us.
it was becoming more and more real.
Right, right,
Because I mean, it wasn't that just that experience
right,
that we've
right,
had gone through of
right.
answered prayers. It was
yeah.
just so many
But that
more.
was so personal.
Yeah, and that's the one we probably remember the most.
Hmm.
Yeah, you were
Um,
saying?
well, the we decided, because of that, we decided to leave to my grandparents' house.
Mm-hmm.
And but my dad stayed, I think, stayed around, and of
Mm-hmm.
course, my when I say grandparents from my mom's side, my dad's side, they were right across the street from us, like you mentioned earlier. So they um, they were there still, and my dad happened to be there. So supposedly they came back and they did the threatening again, and they held my grandpa and my dad at gunpoint. It's
Mm.
like, you're gonna give us the house right now, or
Mm.
we're gonna shoot you.
Yeah.
And my grandpa said, well, like, you can't take the house. Like, this is ours. We got the house, so you can't take it.
Legally.
Yeah,
Hmm.
we paid for it and everything, so there's nothing wrong that we've done. We got this. I wasn't there, obviously. This is what I heard.
They also
This
said that
conversation.
they tried to back their truck into the door
Mm-hmm.
and the gate.
Right.
That same gate seems to be protected with angels or something.
Yeah.
They tried to back that truck
Uh-huh.
to break the gate, and it would come all the way to the gate and would stop.
Mm.
And it's like, why not just break it?
Mm.
Why not just go in and just take over? Like literally,
And at the time, there is just like literally, there's so many stories of
yeah, yeah.
That was the
this is
convenient thing to
this
do.
is the most convenient thing. Yeah, it's like
These
it's
things
easy.
were happening to
Right.
other
Yes,
people.
right.
They were happening to other people. I remember one of our friends mentioned that his one of the teachers at school that had taught us at high school got into it with a student. They had some beef together. Later, the student drives with some family members and they shoot him in front of the school and gun him down. So these things like were constantly happening. We'd hear about them, and there was a
Complete
time.
chaos.
Yeah, there was a time where, at the time, I was growing my hair a little bit, and there was this thing going around that they were killing kids with longer hair. So it was just there was no the army was dissolved. There was no security.
Well, the
The
borders
borders
were
were open.
open, so you had all kinds of
Terrorism entering.
terrorism, crazy people coming in,
Yeah.
rejects of other countries trying to, take over or,
Hmm.
you know,
And you
build
have
new
to remember
militias.
that this country is, at the time, I think it had the second highest oil reserve or oil reserves in the world. And so no wonder all these wars, right?
Yeah.
So yet the people suffered so much, and
There
um,
was a lot of poverty.
and they were not delivered after the war. Let's
Right.
just say that situation did not get better. The country is so diverse. There was maybe like 50 parties or so. I mean, this is an estimate, but that were all weaponized, and they were all trying to take over the government.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I don't know, but we'd still go to school, and life would still move on. And I remember, like, at times I went to um, college for a month before we left, and I would take a taxi, and I would think this could be my last day. Who knows? Could be caught in a car bombing. I could be kidnapped. Kidnapping was getting very popular at that time. Anybody that they knew had any sort of money or anything would be kidnapped. So these things were going in our minds, I think,
Mm.
at that time
Yeah.
constantly.
So earlier, Nabil, you were saying that you didn't have the thought of moving out
Hmm.
of the country, but now after being threatened personally with your life and property and kidnapping for ransoms, did you start thinking after it became so personal to you? Did you start thinking to move out to have a better life, a safer life, a better future?
We never really thought about it. I mean, because we had never traveled
Hmm.
to another country, we never really thought about leaving because of life being, spent entirely in Iraq.
And
Um,
it was difficult. It was almost
and,
impossible
and
to
it was
leave.
difficult, yeah,
Impossible
to
to leave.
get, your visa or even your passport. I mean, I remember you were about 18 or so
Mm-hmm.
at the time, and it was very difficult for you to get your visa.
Mm.
So traveling was not really on our mind. But at the same time, when you're threatened to be killed, obviously it has to cross your mind at some point. But I believe the way we left was we never intended to leave. It was simply for a wedding that we had in Jordan. My cousin was getting married, and basically we were just planning to attend the wedding while
I
he
think,
was he was
Well, I
considering leaving.
actually, um, the war happened my last year of high school,
Hmm.
where you take the exam.
Right.
So it was literally months before the exam. Um, so
2003. Yeah.
2003. So I was 17, almost 18. Um, so it happened then, and then we have relatives who were living here for years in the States, and between that and then we had my grandparents there, so they said, well, between my parents and saying this is difficult situations we're living in, so on and so forth. So it happened to where my grandparents were gonna come basically to the States,
Hmm.
and
They had been to the States a few times
yeah,
before.
they've
I
been
think our
staying.
dad had also been a few times, and he had traveled.
Yeah, and my grandpa was studies his masters in the States, and so um so anyway, I last year of high school, took the exam and everything, and but then I was gonna go with them to come to the States. We didn't have an embassy in Iraq, so we had to go to Jordan. Um, I went with my grandparents, and of course they got the visa. They were gonna travel. I do the interview. Of course, at the time, barely speaking English, um, and they basically didn't give me the visa.
Hmm.
You can't go. We're not giving you the visa. Of course, I was bummed out.
Hmm.
um, my grandparents end up, you know, coming to the States. I went back to Iraq, and I went to college for a year, and then from there, I gave it another try. Went back to Jordan, and again applied to get the visa, and they they said, okay, we're gonna put you on hold. When they put you on hold, it means like, okay, there's a
Good
chance. They're
news.
just gonna do a background check and so on. So I didn't want to get too excited. It was like for me, it was like a dream to come
Mm.
to the States. Hearing my family, relatives, my grandparents talking about it, it's just like, wow,
Video games.
Video games, yeah,
And I think even like that you were leaving, somehow we didn't think that we would all leave.
yeah,
I
Right.
remember when you left the first time for your interview, we were crying.
yeah, yeah.
And
So
So,
what was the reason to leave? What was the visa for?
student visa,
Student. So you wanted
yeah,
to come here to study.
to study, yeah. Well, that was probably, I don't know if it was the easiest way to get the visa, but it was to study, so that's how we applied for it. But
I mean, I don't think that there was much future in Iraq anymore, especially toward the end. They were threatening the highly educated and the
oh, they killed a lot of
uh,
doctors and a lot of
yes,
educated. Yeah,
and so
absolutely.
it was, and because of our educational background,
Yeah.
we didn't. It was almost impossible to place into the better careers,
Hmm.
and so um, not to say that computer science was not, because that's what you went to college for,
Well,
but then
engineering got accepted, but I wanted to do computer science. That's what I did
yes,
the first 1 year, the first year,
yeah.
and then the
At least
second
you
year
had a
I went.
chance because my score was a was had no chance to do anything that was was good, but yeah, yeah. So
Well, our family, my grandpa, and they're well established. They're well
mm,
established, well to do,
mm.
very well to do. But in countries like Iraq, you're just like there's not
You're just trying to
there
survive at that point.
survive. Yeah, I mean, but even if there's no war, everything is capped. You can't.
Yeah.
It's like you can be really wealthy and everything,
Hmm.
but there's not much opportunity to grow,
Yeah.
be better, and so on. So,
Even like during the economic sanction, keep your thought.
yeah.
Um, there was a lot of things that we couldn't have.
Hmm.
Bananas were
Hmm.
gone. Chocolate was made out of dates. So
Yeah, the first few years was really,
yeah.
yeah, man.
But anyway, keep going.
Yeah, I know. I mean, so they're well to do, um, but
There's
obviously,
a limit.
yeah, but obviously on top of it, the situation was really bad,
Mhm.
so it's like it's not really worth living there anymore. But of course, with the help of our relatives here and my grandparents coming and things like that, that opportunity opened up. And so the second year I applied, I was in hold, so I went back to Iraq, and then from there, that they I don't know if it was email at the time. I don't know if there was email at the time, but anyway, we were notified. Yeah. So, it was exciting for me.
Mhm.
I
It's a
mean,
dream.
for me, out of all of you, I was the most excited about it. Like, it's like, wow, So, especially that I wanted it and it didn't happen, and it seems like an impossibility, just like you want something so bad and it's not happening. But anyway, so I go to Jordan, and that's when you
Hmm.
said our cousin
Hmm.
got married. That's when we all went.
We ended up when you came back from your first trip was when we actually went back together. You went back to get with us to Jordan.
To
It was
Jordan,
your
but at
second
the
time
time,
while it was
I had
our
gotten
first.
the visa.
Right, right,
But then when I got the visa, I was gonna leave, so everyone, you all came.
right. And
Uh,
that was another interesting, you know, 16 hours of driving
Driving,
in the
yeah,
middle of nowhere just to be able to, avoid the rebels and some of the people that would
right,
would,
Mm.
That
yeah,
was the only exit from Baghdad to Jordan.
right.
You have to drive 16 hours because of the sanctions.
Mm.
No airplanes were allowed,
Mhm.
so you cannot travel by plane. And the only way was to exit through Jordan. That was the only exit way.
hmm
So it was a drive, 16-hour drives from Baghdad to Amman,
hmm
Jordan.
yeah,
Mhm. Yeah, we so you got the visa and then you left us. And then here we are, in Jordan. Do we want to go back, or what are we gonna do? I think our family that was here in the States
Mm,
suggested that why don't we also come? Why don't I apply also for a student visa? Because at that time I was done with high school also,
mm.
and
I think the terrorist was also taking over our home at the time, so we
he
weren't
hadn't he
sure.
hadn't just
He
yet.
hadn't taken over yet, but he
Yeah,
was planning to fully take over.
yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And so I went in and I interviewed, and I was rejected because I didn't speak any English, and they would ask me the question, and I would turn to my dad for an answer. And so the person interviewing was frustrated, and he said, "Well, you need to go back and study English." And so he told my dad, "Sit down," and then he was like, you need to go back and study English. This you can't go and study; it's hard." So I told him, "Well, my brother just went with whatever English I could speak. My brother just went." And so he was like, "Your brother?" So he started to, I think, look you up on the computer. But at that time, he had just made up his mind. I told him
Mm,
he's studying English as second language before
mm,
actually starting his, college.
mm.
And so, oh yeah, so I think he looked you up, but at that time, I think he was in a bad mood, which it seems like
They had a
depends on who
yeah.
you interview and if they're in a
Generally,
good mood or not.
generally they weren't the nicest.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Well, they were seeing thousands of people
yeah,
daily, so they had
yeah.
to also select who they wanted.
yeah.
And even though we had everything, we had I had an I-20 proof, of um, you had to, I think, show proof of um, money that you have still in your country or something like that. And then
Like you're gonna study and come back. You're not
basically,
just
yeah,
leaving for good.
yeah,
Yeah, that period of time was really hard to get a visa.
yes.
Whether
I
a
mean,
student or refugee, whatever it
there was
is, it
just
was
war with
early.
Iraq,
It was
and
early, and of course people are gonna want to leave, and
yeah,
who's leaving, you know?
yeah, yeah,
A few years later, they opened it up more
yeah,
for, you know,
yeah,
a lot of
exactly.
refugees and
But that time was difficult, and so I, so he decided to reject me. And if you remember, Nabil, we took this joke of an English course that I think we knew more than the teacher.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think it was just for confidence. And so we start
We would correct him at times.
something like that, yeah.
Yeah,
It was, and
it's
we didn't have like a lot of English background. It was just mainly from movies
video
and
games, movies,
video games,
music.
grammar, music. Um, but we never spoke English.
Hmm.
mm,
And so next time I went, I took my mom. And I think my mom did a better job. And the person interviewing us was nice, and she everything was smooth, and she,
She
granted me
put
the
you on
visa.
hold like
It
a
was tough though because it was such a short time. Nabil and my parents had interviewed for a visitor visa, and they had gotten it.
They told me that we'd be able to give you the visa without a hold
Yeah,
right away. I was 14 years old. I'm no threat to anybody.
yes.
But they basically told my parents or our parents, um, if you would rather wait till, we put you on hold and we
Hmm.
grant you the visa, it would be best to. But basically, my situation was very different
mm,
Mm,
because I was a 14-year-old kid, no threat to anybody.
mm.
Clearly, if I'm gone, I'm gone with my parents.
yeah.
So, just different
And
situations.
for parents was not also a visitor visa.
Right,
So
visitor
they were
visa.
planning to, they were showing, oh, no, no, we have everything is still in
Right.
Iraq. There's a lot of
It
stuff.
was
So,
very
so we
difficult.
can't, you know.
It was very difficult to get the visa
Hmm.
because so many people were trying to leave for
Hmm.
good, and they were
Hmm.
not leaving to visit. They were leaving to just, relocate
Hmm.
because of the economical issues. But what happened the second time? You were
So
granted the
it,
visa.
it was a few weeks before your visa would expire and you
Mhm.
had to leave.
Right.
And so I was in such a tough spot that I have to somehow, within a short span of time, I have to get my visa to be able to travel with them, or I'm stuck home. They would either stay with me and abandon their visa, or they would leave me. and
Or
so
abandon you.
abandoned me, yeah. And so, um, honestly, I did enjoy Jordan a little bit.
You
Um,
did
yeah,
quite a
I,
bit.
I enjoyed a little bit
Quite a
the fact that you were gone. And so, uh, but it
It
was
was short. It
it
was
was short,
short-lived.
yeah,
Short-lived.
short-lived. Shoot, we had to be reunited, you know. Anyway, so yeah, but we I got the visa the second time. She was nice. And then we came here to the US,
2005.
2005. Yeah, that was the first half of my life. The other half was here in the States.
Mm,
And
mhm,
maybe we can next time talk about this other new chapter from you know, going from war to freedom.
mm. It's crazy talking about these things like
Yeah,
right now in details because we don't always, talk about it.
yeah,
But
yeah.
how things worked out and yeah. But
I mean, we have never been back since, but it's hard to find time to sit and talk. I'm glad we got to do this. Thanks, Eva, for
Thank you for answering all my
facilitating.
questions. Was
did we
nice.
answer all the questions?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Cool. Well, next time we'll do the other half, the new chapter.
Sounds good.